Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. Now, this week, I know I'm going to say this every week, but this week I'm particularly excited because I've got someone that I've known for a long time professionally, but I've had I will say, pleasure of knowing him outside of work as well. So we're joined by Mark Leather. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much.
So today I'm going to delve into, I've heard a lot of stories from Mark over the years, so hopefully he's going to divulge some of these. I am very disappointed he's not worn his FA Cup finalists suit. The was it what colour was it? Armani, was it?
It was a nice, slightly off-white, creamy Armani suit. Clearly goes with this complexion.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see you've dressed up for the occasion today anyway.
Absolutely.
So first things first, Mark, how did you get into physio?
Right. Well, as a young, aspiring footballer, with no real class, quality, coordination and balance, played for a number of local teams, including the school. And while at school in the sixth form, I injured my knee and had a cartilage injury that for a 17-year-old was pretty rare then. And I didn't realise really how bad that injury was going to be. However, it rendered me out of action with a plaster of Paris cast for 2 weeks, and then it still wasn't really right. I couldn't really play football for maybe 5 or 6 months, and then it went again. And then at that point, surgery was selected to solve the problem. And so therefore, I became more in vogue with the work of the physios at the local hospital in Bolton. But I didn't really understand the difference between physiotherapists and maybe remedial gymnasts, which were the people that looked after me. Now that word, or those words, remedial gymnasts, it's a bit of an outdated term, but at the time they were probably more like sort of remedial instructors from the armed forces, more physically orientated, MSK, rehab, pool, gym scenario. And I was just thrown into the deep end as a patient in the gym, in the pool with these guys that I just thought were physios. However, there was a slight difference that they were quite athletic looking, little white Fred Perrier texture shirts, short cropped hair, looking pretty smart, navy blue trousers. And then in the next bit of the outpatient departments was white coats, shirt and ties, little tunics and cubicles, and they were the physios that worked in there. And I thought, I'm not really sure about that. But the gym side of it, the active rehab and the pool areas, I really enjoyed, bizarrely, being injured, in fact, by these people. And so it was never a case of going to do physiotherapy. It was a case of, I will have a look at this profession, the remedial gymnast profession. But as usual with me, slapdash at that time of my life, sloppy, didn't work, didn't really do any much with my A-levels, applied too late, didn't get in, needed a job. So I was thrown into the bank, Williams and Glyn's Bank in Bolton, that's no longer there. Well, the bank's there, but the name's not there. And it was just a job. And I can remember vividly going in first morning, suited and booted, and realised that I'd made a massive, massive mistake. This was never going to be for me. And that's horrible gut-wrenching feeling in your tummy that you're just a duck out of water. If only I'd listened to teachers that had told me you need to pull your socks up, you need to work, you need to have a think and a plan. I didn't do any of that. And I was paying the price, and it was the first time in my life where I felt really down. But I knew that there was only one person that could really get you out of that mess, and that was me. So I made a beeline to apply again, get some experience at the hospital, do another GCSE in human biology at night school, and viewed it really as, I wouldn't say getting out the ghetto, but it was a little bit like that. I'm from Bolton, and Bolton's, always fond memories of being brought up in that area. But I knew that my friends had left to go to uni, college, working jobs that they liked. And I was lucky enough to get offered a place. And to be honest, I've never ever looked back and thought, oh, I wished I'd done something else. But soon after qualifying, the two professions amalgamated. So remedial gymnast numbering, say, 500, joined the CSP with some complementary skills course, and CSP numbering, I don't know, 20, 30,000 practitioners at the time. So I did some of the physio qualifications and became a chartered physio, but I never really was that interested in 90% of the profession, really.
All right, okay. Just before we get into it, sorry to interrupt your style. Just move your colour because it's catching on the microphone.
I will do. How's
There
that?
we go.
I'll put it down.
It's a good look. It's a good look. So you don't fall into that category of one of the many people who could have made it at football hadn't been for that injury.
No, I was at best local level football, knew my position in terms of the hierarchical structure of football, and I was nowhere near that. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed everything about football, from watching football to playing football with your friends, playing for the school, maybe refereeing football matches, which I did when I was younger. I enjoyed just being around football and footballers, and it was the only real sport in my generation that you did in the winter, alongside rugby and cricket in the summer. That was it. Football, rugby, cricket, nothing else existed in Bolton.
Yeah, no, well, that's good. So when you say that it was basically 90% of it you weren't interested in, what was the 10% that you were?
Bizarrely, we had a strong training as a remedial gymnast in sort of care of the elderly, and more or less like dementia wards now, where mental illness was, psychiatry or whatever we want to call it. There was a big emphasis of our training in that, because it was more sort of recreational exercise therapy that motivated and entertained and stimulated the brain cells of these people, from people that were sat in geriatric day hospitals or in care homes, or from mental illness. They were inpatients in long stay mental illness, and I quite liked that, and I surprised myself because I didn't think I would do, but I quite liked it, and I got something from it, and sort of lived with me even to this day. It was very feeling a little bit of humility and feeling humble that you're really lucky that you are not in that sort of situation. As I'm sure physios working in an intensive care unit, or physios working on a palliative care environment, where you feel quite sad, and I'm sure very close to these patients, that they're real people, real families around them, and it's quite an evoking emotion, really, if you're in that environment. And I quite like the mental illness unit. I found it that they were quite really friendly people, a bit of fun, and they work with the cynicism that maybe normal life's about. They haven't got that. Their normal world was whatever that normal world is for people suffering with those things. And they made me laugh. We had some fun, and at the same time, you were offering, I think, a bit of a service for them, really.
So if that was the case, then how did the transition to sport happen?
There was no transition needed for football, because those sorts of footballers that I've worked, they're nearly all like that, living in their own world, happy little go-lucky people. So seriously, football, I didn't go into the profession to be working in football. I worked in it just to sort of help people with those sort of orthopedic, sports-related maybe injuries, but I never thought of football until I was in my final year, and I thought, I don't really know much about sports injuries, because you didn't really see them in the NHS. You didn't see only those where surgery is required, fractures, dislocations, major trauma. So you didn't see a lot of the soft tissue, ligament injuries and muscle injuries. You didn't really see those. So I thought, I'm going to go up to a local club just outside of Wakefield called Ossett. And I went to a team called Ossett Town. I didn't drive. So I paid me money to go up on a bus twice a week. And I've just made myself available to look at training injuries and advise these guys. And then found it quite strange that they were actually getting better, some of them, which gave me even more confidence that perhaps I do know a little bit. I have learned something. And so that was when I first thought I wouldn't mind, getting involved in that. And then following that, I went to Stoke-on-Trent and worked in a rheumatology centre in Burslem. That at the time, the footballers from Port Vale were using the hospital for treatment. They didn't have a chartered physio. They just had a guy who did a little bit in the club, but they came up to the hospital and some of the physios treated them. I didn't actually treat them. I was in a different department, but they used to come up. And I was asked, would I be interested in treating these guys in my lunch hour? So I said, yeah, I'll have a go at that. And what started off as an hour at lunchtime, once or twice a week became, I'll be back down to the club, which is only 2 minutes from the ground, at 4 o'clock. And when I finish work, and I'll do an hour and a half there. Then would I travel with the team? And of course, at that age with no experience really, I did that. In between times, from Ossett to Port Vale, I'd also been lucky enough to do a little bit of work at Leek Town with a guy called Mick Pedgick, who's still a good friend of mine now. And those that don't know Mick Pedgick, he was a top draw footballer. Very fit, very strong fullback that played for Stoke City, Everton, England. He's a good man, and that sort of got me a little bit of a way into Port Vale as well, really. And then I sort of did both jobs, worked in the NHS and helped Port Vale out, and basically ran that little department. Which I say little department, it was me and nobody else, so it was a very small department really. And from there, moved on into another couple of jobs with the NHS back in Doncaster, actually, for 12 months, while my wife-to-be was working in Rotherham. And I got a call from Alan Smith, the Sheffield Wednesday physio, just to say, would I help some cover for a month, covering match days mainly, due to him having ankle surgery. And the manager at the time was Howard Wilkinson. And so I did that, and that sort of gave me a good person in the football context, obviously, to give me a reference, both Alan Smith and Howard Wilkinson, which they did when I eventually took my first job in football at Brighton and Hove Albion. And in those days, they were just advertised in the daily press. Can you believe that now? Daily Mail, physio required, first team physio, Brighton Football Club. But that's what they did. And I thought, throw it in, throw the application in.
Nick Worth was saying that. He said he saw his, when he went to, I think it was Sheffield Wednesday, he saw the advert. It's mental to think of that.
It is. But what I would say is that while at Doncaster, and this is true, I emailed, I didn't email, I posted 92 letters with a stamped addressed envelope to all Football League clubs asking would they be interested in employing me. And I had 14 replies, and all 14 said no, not interested in that, whether who are you? And that was it. So I think I then obviously used Howard and Alan's experience at Sheffield, bits of Port Vale, and John Rudge gave me a reference to two, and Mick Pedgick, and I called upon those people on my application form to Brighton and Hove Albion. So although I think I was young, which I was, but I'd had, in real terms, 3 experiences of first team football, from the old first division down into, I think it was Division 2. Certainly Brighton were in the old Division 3 and Port Vale were the old Division 4. So I got a reasonable experience. And people, always this thing in life, networking. Doesn't matter how good you are, how bad you are, if people are voting for you and giving you help up the ladder, then sadly there is still a lot of that around. But I think I deserve that in my own way, because I put myself out at places like Ossett Town for no money, going up on a bus, putting, and so you did a little bit of an apprenticeship, whereas some physios just jump straight from uni into Arsenal Football Club or Everton or whatever it is. I didn't do that. I worked my way up the ladder, really.
Sorry, Mark. You have to take that zip up off. Keep catching.
Well, better not show that.
No.
Don't want that being advertised.
So when you got the Brighton job then, so I guess you just have to move down there then?
Yes, we'd already moved to Devon to get married, and I got a job in an Exeter hospital. These jobs were only 12 months, each one Doncaster 12 months. Port Vale really just a bit more than 12 months in Stoke-on-Trent, and so this was my third sort of NHS post. And then I'd only been doing that maybe 4 or 5 months when this job came up, and we left Brighton, sold the house overnight really, and then moved into a place in Worthing, which is a little bit cheaper than living in Brighton, because I didn't look at the cost of housing. I just thought they paid me a couple of grand a year more, which was big money in those days. And then I thought, heck, property is really expensive at a time when interest rates were 14 and 15%. Imagine that now.
That's crazy.
It was a lot of money, yeah.
So when you go into these departments, you've written to all of the Football League clubs. What setups did they have? When you go into Brighton, what do they have?
Brighton, to be fair, were reasonably well equipped with, at the time, reasonably well equipped with a nice treatment room, 3 beds, proper ice machine, a little bit of electrotherapy, which was used at the time a bit more than maybe it's used now. An ultrasound machine, maybe a bit of an infrared lamp that was used for just warming things up and then using your hands to treat them, whatever it was. And a nice gym, small gym, but with a bit of free weights that seemed to be actually out of vogue. But as we know now, and we always realise, free weights can be better than machine weights at times in certain situations. So we had a reasonable setup, and things like a simple thing like the old team bath, probably a disaster for infection and catching bugs and everything else. But what a tool that was to get your injured players in there for a bit of hydrotherapy. Although living in Brighton, we had a big hydrotherapy called the English Channel. Get them down on the beaches, get them into the sea, all weather, which was a bit of a, there was a few dissensions about getting in the water, but
so you actually
great.
Did that?
Yeah. Did that maybe 2 or 3 times a week for 20 minutes, half an hour. Simple things of standing in the pool, standing in the sea with the water up to maybe the waist, and then just the sand giving way and giving them something to catch and throw and balance and coordination. It was a great proprioceptive tool for balance and coordination. Plus, the cold was helping to reduce some of the inflammatory process, and the punishment of doing that clearly deterred people from being injured in the first place, maybe.
So this was something for injured players only. It wasn't like a team building thing for the whole squad.
No, it was for injured people that probably the coach used to think it was for those that were debating whether to declare their injury that would render them out of training and playing for a few days. If that was what you had to do, somebody would decide, maybe I'm not going to do that because I have no intention of freezing my socks off in the English Channel 3 afternoons a week. But for me, it worked well. And actually, even at clubs like Liverpool, further down the line, the team bath was used, far easier to use that team bath than at the time we didn't have a pool in the training ground. So it was easier to use the water in the pool, in the changing rooms at Anfield, than it was to go and find a local gym and pool down the road that really, did we need that? By the time I've driven over there, I might as well go to the stadium. And that's what we did. So people like Steve Harkness, a double fracture of his of his lower limb with internal fixation. He spent quite a lot of time in that water environment, and it didn't do him any harm, and it's not done many people any harm. But clearly, Liverpool don't need to go into a team bath that's no longer there. The training ground and the stadium's completely different.
So after Brighton, then what was next?
What was next was financial ruin. Living in Brighton, interest rates at 15%, and clearly, Mrs. Leather was very interested in, forming a family. And those that know, as you do, Andy, the three lads, you think, what a bad move that was. And I agree, it was a bad move. However, to start a family, we couldn't afford to buy a house. We were living in a flat. For in many ways, I did enjoy Brighton. I was very sad the other day to find out that the ex-chairman Greg Stanley had died, who was a real, an old school football director, chairman, a real top quality, funny guy, fantastic bloke. And he sadly died the other week. But I enjoyed my time at Brighton. But we knew we had to really move back north to the cheaper options of buying a house, which we did. And for the same money, we bought ourselves a nice 3-4 bedroom house and started the family.
And so, what was the job that you moved back up for?
Well, a temporary job really at Chorley Hospital, which I thoroughly enjoyed that. Those that know the hospital, it's a bit different than when I was there, but it was still a family cottage type hospital, working in the gym, working in the outpatient departments, and I was lucky enough to then be asked to go to Preston North End, and I think I knew that really that's where I wanted to be, was in football full time. So I took the job at Preston North End and stayed there for probably 2 years, maybe a bit more than that, and then went to Burnley, and then received quite a lot of stick from the local press in Preston. A nice guy, he dropped me in it a little bit, Brian Ellis, the reporter. I think I did say it was a bigger job, meaning that the job was bigger in terms of salary and conditions and everything else. Not the club. I didn't say, Preston fans listening, I never said that. I didn't say Preston were a bigger club than Burnley. So I think Preston were probably, the supporters, quite happy to see me go, which is not nice because I'm not that bad a guy. And I went to Burnley, and I would say, people have asked me, what was your favourite club? Where did you enjoy it most? And I still think Burnley was the time of my life, and the club where I really enjoyed myself there, and I was really sort of proud to work for that club because they were a proper club. When I say that, your stewards suited and booted with club ties, players and staff and family looked after on reserve matches in the evening, hot food. I mean, come on. I hope Boris Johnson's listening to this. Free food, hot food for everyone. There was none of this universal credit. It was fantastic. But they did, and travelled well. We stayed overnight in proper hotels. They believed that was the best way to prepare the players at Burnley Football Club for first team football. It didn't stop me driving a minibus for the reserves and getting back from Grimsby at 3 o'clock in the morning and rolling back into Turf Moor at 8 o'clock in the morning. They didn't get preferential treatment, but your reward in the first team was they looked after you. And I liked it at Burnley. I really did.
What was the division that they were in then?
Well, they'd left the Championship, as it would be now, into Division 1, which was Division 3. And so they were in the same division as Preston at the time. But I think anyone that's been to Gawthorpe the training ground at Burnley will realise that it's always been a fantastic training facility. When I was there, it was probably a bit dated from the Bob Lord, Jimmy Adamson days of the 70s, but you could see that the pitches and the facilities were all going to, there was something about them. It was a proper training ground, really. And I thought it's a good environment for me to work in. And I thought they got a real chance of getting out of that league, which they did. And so I think in my first season, maybe first full season, we got promotion through the playoffs into the championship, at which, true to form, Leather deserts the ship and leaves to go to Liverpool. But my last match for Burnley was the playoff final at Wembley, so we win the game, and it was a nice feeling to sort of leave the club on that sort of note, rather than sadly other clubs where you've been relegated, which is always bad. But it's part and parcel of life, the good with the bad. But I enjoy Burnley, good club.
So you've got Burnley then. So then you say you go to Liverpool. So how does that transition happen? How do you find out about the job?
No idea how it happened. Well, I know how it happened, but I don't know why they employed me. But again, it was while at Burnley and Preston, I did a lot of work for the FA in the summer, lecturing on their treatment of injuries courses. So I'd networked a few people on the medical and sports science departments at the FA, and the guy who ran it, Alan Hodson, who's a top guy. He trained me at college. He was somebody I'd known for a long time, and he was a really lovely fella, very friendly, very just down to earth guy. And he said I'd had a phone call from, I think it was Phil Boersma, who was working for Liverpool for Graham Souness, that they wanted a physio to come in, but they needed a chartered physio to front it up, rather than the present format that they got, which was following the old boot room way. Ronnie Moran was the physio trainer, Bob Paisley, Joe Fagan, Roy Evans. There's no one with a first aid qualification or any other qualification. It's just that's what they did. Packed in plane and became the trainer, and which was the inverted commas the physio. So I think Graham Souness was the person that really decided that we need to make this club much more up to speed of modern day football. And I never had the pleasure of working with him, but I think he tried, possibly in his own admission, that he tried to change things too quickly, and for some people that was far too much to do, and there was a little bit of politics and a bit of dissension and restraint from players to do what was asked of them. So he had a tough job. Results didn't go well. Surprise, surprise. His players down tools, and he went. So I only went for my first interview, which was, I think, the week after he'd been sacked, actually. And it was Roy Evans who interviewed me, with Mark Waller, the club doctor, and Tom Saunders, who was a gentleman. Tom Saunders was, the old scout, ex-teacher, lovely family, lovely guy. And I had that interview in January, I think, or early February. And then I didn't get any, did I get a second interview? Maybe I did. Maybe I got a second interview a month later, but certainly from the end of February through till April, nothing. Not heard anything. I thought it's something, and I didn't ring and go, I didn't contact the club. I thought that, you can't do that. That's Liverpool Football Club. You can't, if they want you, they'll let you know. I think, I wonder when they're going to let me know. And it went on and on and on. And then just as I was thinking, that's it, that's the way it was. And I had a call from Mark Waller, the club doctor, to say that they want to offer you the job. And then the manager wants to just ring to have a chat with you. So fine, brilliant. So I didn't tell anybody, and I was waiting for the call. And then the call came through. Of course, Roy Evans on the phone. Now, anyone that knows Roy Evans and hear him speak, you've no idea what he's saying. he talks so quick, broad Scouse accent. I had no idea what he was on about. So I'm going, yeah, oh, yeah. What he said. Put the phone down. My wife said, "Did he go?" I said, "Well, I think he was okay with it." And what's the terms and conditions? I said, "I have no idea. I've just said yeah." So it was a crap salary, needless to say. And I got the final, contract through from Peter Robinson, and I started in the middle of June. And
so for that then, so in terms of salary, like what was the salary like in general for a physio working in sport?
Well, it was probably going to from Burnley to Liverpool, probably 2.5 times my salary, really. So in today's equivalents, I've no idea what that would be for it, but that's part of football, really, is that there is no structure. It's just what someone's prepared to pay you. There's no, you think I'm worth this. They'll tell you what they think you're worth. And then you might have a bit of bargaining. So from club to club, it could be quite embarrassing, really, for doing the same job. You're being paid 3 times more than somebody else, which is, a bit naughty, really. But the difference between the National Health Service and the football club in the lower leagues is probably no difference. So these people that think coming into football, everybody's got pots of money, forget that. If you're starting off in the NHS, it's the same as a teacher starting off 22, 23, 24,000. Then in the lower divisions, you can expect to earn that and work maybe 3 times, I wouldn't say harder, because everybody works hard, but commitment time, evenings and weekends and Christmas days and Boxing days, it's not pretty pleasant when you pick your pay packet up at the end of the month. But the carrot is move up the ladder, and usually it means better terms and conditions, and like anybody else, players included. If the higher up you go, probably the more money you earn.
Yeah,
so I've had it both ways. Not so much money, and clearly more than I would earn, in the physiotherapy profession elsewhere.
So you go into Liverpool, and that is the time when they've probably having a bit of a transitional period after Souness. So they've got the likes of John Barnes there. Was Dix there, Ruddock, all those guys?
Yeah, what happened was the first day was pre-season. No one was in. It was a week before pre-season started. So I just rolled up. No one met me. You just rolled up. Coaches weren't there. Pardon?
Is it Melwood?
Melwood, yeah. Gate man on the door, opens the gate. Then you come, we're expecting you. Right, off you go in. Nobody there. Coaching staff all gone, all on holiday.
How old are you at this stage, Mark?
25. No, I wasn't. I was 30. 25 at Brighton and 30 by the time I took Liverpool. But 30, you're thinking you're old at 30. Still wet behind the ears. A little bit more streetwise with footballers, but still, it's there was a different world I'm entering. And so I'm thinking, there's nothing here. There's a treatment room and there's no documentation, there's no real records. It was a bit of an eye-opener. And suddenly I'm setting the scales right, because that's one of the things first day pre-season will weigh the players. So I'm setting the scales up and calibrating them. And in walks this bloke that I thought, that's Neil Ruddock, that. And he came and introduced himself, full of life, bouncing along, without asking, just said, are those scales up to working? I said, yeah. He said, great, just what I need. So he strips off then into his little sloggies, jumps on, and then said, they're not right. They're way out. I said, they're not way out, they're bang on. And showed him, put a 2 kilogram weight onto the scales, 2 kilo. Took it off, 5 kilo weight, 5 kilo. 5 and 2, 7. They're working. So I knew what he'd left in May, 5 weeks earlier, maybe 6 weeks, because I'd got the record that there'd just a few players that had been weighed. He was one. Surprise, surprise. We better check his weight. And his weight had gone up by 2 stone. 2 stone and 3 pounds. in 5 or 6 weeks, which was a big shock to me. I thought, God, flipping heck. And he was on the radar, which a week later, obviously the manager was in, and he said, you've only two injured players, maybe 3 actually. Molby, Michael Thomas, Mark Wright. But all these are with you. Those 3 plus another 10 others, 12 others. And I said, they're not injured. He said, no, but the surplus to requirements at this moment in time until told otherwise. So we got a list of who's who. You know, Don Hutchinson, Julian Dix, Mark Walters, Nigel Clough, Paul Stewart. The list goes on. Molby, as we've said, Mark Wright in that list. Ooh, it was like a who's who, and thinking, how am I going to cope with this? And I said, what do you want me to do with them? He said, anything you want. He said, I don't care what they do, but they need to be worked. I said, what about afternoons? He said, they can do that as well. So I thought that's better for me, because in the morning, I've got the fit lads to look after. And then as soon as they've finished their early second session in the afternoon, I can concentrate on this lot. So they were in all day, you know, and that caused a bit of unrest in the camp, because they were having to stay all day, which they'd never done, and they didn't like that. So I thought, right, this is going to be quite difficult. So I thought, I wonder who's the biggest hitter of that group of people, apart from the 3 that were injured, Mark Wright, Michael Thomas, and maybe Jan Molby. I thought, who is the biggest hitter? And so I was told, and I thought probably he is Jan Molby, but he is injured. But he wasn't so bad that he couldn't work hard, but he wasn't fit enough to train with the players. So I thought, right, I'm going to do something in an afternoon, straight after lunch, that will be for him. And I looked at him, because he'd have to be, and somebody asked me just the other day, who's the best footballer that you've worked with? And I think there's a few at Liverpool, to be honest, because that time there was a few quality footballers, some coming to the end of the career, some beginning the career. But he would have to be in my top 2 without a shadow of a doubt.
What do you base that on then? What?
His football ability, his positional sense, his ability to see a pass. You know, why run? If you know Jan Molby, you know why. He doesn't want to run. So let the ball do the work. So he'd get that ball, and almost as the ball's coming to, he knows where it's going. And other players would know where it's going in that situation. And he'd sling a pass. Very strong upper body, so you won't get near him, really. You'd have your arm out there and an arm out there, giving him just that split second to be able to do what he wanted to do with the ball, and then he'd jog into position. And nowadays, what did he say? Come in between the lines. You know, come on, DNA. You know, flipping complicated messages, complicated words. It's a simple game. False number 9. Well, he's not a number 9 then, is he? He's something else. Make another number up. Honestly, it drives me potty. But that's what they did. They just came in between the banks of 4, if you like. So he would just mosey in between a couple of players, and then he'd get the ball 20 yards up the field. He's not run anywhere. He's walked or jogged. And then from there, he'd either score a goal from outside the penalty area, or he'd thread a pass in the box, and it'd be Rush, McManaman, Fowler, goal. That was it. So, but he was overweight, unfit, and thought, right, but he's strong, naturally strong. And I think in a previous life, your company sold me an isokinetic machine many moons ago. And we had that in the gym, and he virtually broke the machine with the maximum torque that you could apply on this computer-generated machine. And he would do that just for the hell of it, on his knee quad extension and knee flexion. He was phenomenally strong.
Then he just wasn't like fit, basically.
He wasn't fit for purpose. He wasn't fit to play in the Premier League at the time. He was no longer fit to do that, but he'd still got a football brain. John Barnes adapted his game, and he was fit to play that role because he wasn't like Jan Molby. But for me, Jan Molby wasn't a lost cause. You needed to make it interesting for him because he told me, it's in his book, in one of his books that he wrote, he sent me a book and it's in that what he was saying was that you gave him, it became enjoyable, the pre-season that he had with me, because he knew that everything that was being done was directly linked to helping him on the football pitch. But if you're asking him to run 20 times around a football pitch and doing a bleep test and all this caper, it was absolutely of no use to you whatsoever because he wouldn't do it. And neither was it that important, really, to be put in the big scheme of things. Yeah. And so I asked Roy Moran, I said, do you know a garage round from the training ground, near the training ground? He said, what do you mean a garage? I said, I need a couple of tyres. He said, what's wrong with your car? I said, nothing. Well, what do you need the tyres for? I said, I could do with a van tyre, a lorry tyre, and maybe a tractor tyre. So what for? I said, because I think what I'm going to do is get some Molby to do some running with the against the tyre, like with a rope, a couple of towels around his waist, and he can drag the tyre, box to halfway line, something like that. When are you doing that? I said, well, as soon as you get me the tyres, I said, it'll be one afternoon. He said, they'll be here tomorrow. They'll be here tomorrow. We can't wait for this. Gets his mate, tyres are up, delivered from Elwood in the morning. Tractor tyre, lorry tyre. What time are you starting? And I said, as soon as you finish it, we'll be done 10 minutes early, and we'll get ours. We'll positioned on the pavilion steps. We can't wait to see you do this. Clearly waiting for me to fall, waiting for Molby to descend and stand up to me, and then see what I'm going to do. And I told him, Jan Molby, that look, you need a specific this is like not rocket science now. And it wasn't rocket science to me then. It was just making training more individual to the player, given his history, given what he is, his position and how he plays in that position. What does he really need to do? So it's not everybody having to do the same program. It's easy for coaches to do that. But if it's making you a better player, I'm not sure. And so I told him what you're doing. So you'll only be doing six box to halfway lines and maybe 6 box to box. But you'll be having a rest in between each one, and you're on the lorry tyre, dragging that around your waist. And then I said, it's really good as a resistance for power, explosive power. You build that in, it'll be far easier than running when you come to run on your own, if you're trained in that way a little bit. Basically, that, it's just a way of doing it. Nowadays, we've got weighted vests nowadays, and we've got sled pulls, but we didn't have them then. So how can I form a bit of resistance? And I thought, right, that'll do me. And so he did that. And it was like a cricket match. It was like the pavilion, full. Lord's MCC, all the members are out. You've got laundry ladies, canteen staff, the girls are out. All the players, Molby with a towel. And they're waiting for him not to do it. And I'm thinking, oh God, if he suddenly starts, being awkward now, then I'm going to be embarrassed a bit by this, because what can I tell him? Not a lot.
And so what happened?
He did it. And he did it. And he did it all, 6 and 6. And obviously it's tough, that. And he did it. He didn't moan. I went home, into work next morning. He said, when are we doing that again? And I said, we're going to do that in another 3 or 4 days. Not, it's not silly, just a couple of days a week, along with other things in between, to do other aspects of fitness or work that was applicable to him. And he never moaned. And I worked with him for, I don't know, maybe, actually, he was only working with the team for 2 matches before the season started. He played a 45 minutes and I think a 60-minute game. And then he was straight into the team, first match of the season. And I think we played Crystal Palace away. We won 6-1. and he scored, and he must have had 4 assists. The problem is, he did that for a few weeks, and then slowly but surely, when I say the spots of a leopard never changes, his injury history and the age he was at, lifestyle, probably caught up a little bit with him. But that was Liverpool's first team, and then he came back into the team and out of the team, and he got another 2 seasons at the club, and I think he went to Norwich on loan, and his career moved into coaching. It was Kidderminster where he did, but the first thing he did when he took the manager's job, he rang me and said, "Can you send me some of the drills that we did?" He said, "That's what we need to do here. We don't want," and I was pleased that he'd done that. People like Mark Wright again, that could be, it could have been a bit awkward at times with some staff, but I think he always knew that whatever I was telling him was for his own benefit, really. He might not have agreed with it, but underneath that, I think he realised that you were honest. You were trying to tell him what he needed to do to get fit, and he was that pre-season. He was pretty quick, pretty fit, getting back into full fitness, and he got back in the England team, in the same season. So I was pleased when you feel proud when those things sort of happen. If it goes the other way, then obviously you reflect on what you could have done. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have done this. But I think when things go well, there's usually a reason why you're recommending things.
Yeah. We were actually just talking about Mark Wright and saying that he had that renaissance and he came back and was really, really good in that sort of mid-90s period. And he sort of developed as a player on there. I'll ask you one more question before we wrap up this half. We're going to have to come back and do another one because there's a lot more.
Yeah, no worries.
But so when you take on those players then, so they're massive personalities, all of those are really big names, big investments. What is their attitude like? Have they been told that they're not part of the plans?
Well, some of them probably have, and most of them can read the writing on the wall. And I think they get a feeling, I think at any level of football, and you go back to your own school when the school teacher's leaving you out of a team or out of a squad, that's not a good sign. I can remember at Preston North End, John McGrath was a manager, and they'd signed Frank Worthington. What a legend, Sir Frank Worthington. But he was 39, even then. But he was a fantastic player. And I can remember the manager telling him, or thinking, how do I tell him he's not playing? And obviously he didn't, until it came to the team sheets. And then they read the team out, and he's not in the team. And then it came to naming the subs, and he said, I'll have to watch my language here because it's a bit sweary. And he said, today, Frank, he said, you're a sub. But remember, you're not just a sub, you're an effing good sub. And that was his arm round him to make it a little bit laugh and a joke, but something serious. The following week, Worthington gone.
Right.
Off to Stockport County. Not because John McGrath got rid of him. Frank would have gone in and said, not doing that. I'm being, with all respect, I'm not being a sub for Preston North End. And that's how it works. And I think some coaches let themselves down with the way in which they do deal with players. But that's a little bit for life, isn't it? Where, you should really expect to deal with people how you would want to be dealt with yourself in anything in life. And sometimes you have to be the bearer of bad news. And that, if you're not prepared to put up with that and deal with it properly, you shouldn't really be a coach. You know what I mean? You shouldn't really be in our job as a physio. If you're giving them bad news, you got to have the bad news. As one guy, Mark Gillette, chief medical advisor at the Premier League, in his previous life as working in clubs, he said, "I want to employ you," and I said, "What for?" And he said, "I want you to be the bad news monitor." And that was serious. That he was probably sick and tired of giving bad news to coaches, and Mark will do that. Get him in. He doesn't mind giving bad news. Needless to say, I didn't do it. But I think you've got to be careful, because if they have to play for you, and if they don't want to play for you, they don't respect you, which is a different thing to liking you. And if they respect your decision, they're not going to believe that they shouldn't be left out of the team. But if you do it in the right way, I'm sure that most people understand that. And it's a fact of life. You can only pick 11 players, and there's 25 in a squad, 26 in a squad. It's not. It's a numbers game. But I always think that as a coach, you're not leaving players out. If they are performing every week, why would you leave them out? They're obviously not performing every week, or they're not doing what you want them to do. But that's a separate issue of where you're recruiting people to do something that they didn't do that at the previous club, where they were the world beater. They didn't play like that. You're asking them to play a different game, and they can't do it. That's not the player fault. That's probably that you shouldn't have signed him to do that, because we call that a square peg in a round hole, and that very rarely works in the long term.
Yeah, that's good. So we'll wrap up there for this one, but there is loads more to talk about. So
okay, well, we'll arrange another one.
We'll do that. But yeah,
whenever you want, give us maybe next week or something. I can get some time for you.
Sounds good.
All right, pal.
Cheers, Mark.